Greetings ladies and gentlefish, and welcome to this review of the Tier 6 Chinese medium tank, the Type-58. As ever, I'm going to kick off with a little bit of history, but the emphasis really is going to be on little here. The only thing to really say about the Type-58 is that the Soviets at the time exported quite a lot of military hardware to the Chinese, and the Type-58 was the Chinese designation of the T-34-85. That's about it. It's basically a T-34-85 with a Chinese star slapped on the side. And that's about it. So T-34 with an 85mm gun. There we go. History done. Moving on. What do you get in-game? Well, in-game this kind of is a rather average, mediocre Tier 6 medium tank. 750 hit points is basically average. 520 horsepower on a 33 ton machine gives you a specific power of, I can never find the number, 15.83, so slightly under 16 horsepower per ton, which is okay. Traverse speed of 42 degrees a second, turret traverse of 48, which is pretty good. Hull armor, well, it's a T-34 hull, I mean 45, 45, 40, you're at tier 6 now. This sloping is probably not going to save you that much. Turret armor, 90, 75, 52. Again, you can get some bounces from this, but you shouldn't really expect it. We'll talk more about the gun in a moment. 370 meter view range is perfectly decent for tier 6, and a 525 meter signal range is perfectly acceptable. There's nothing really wrong with it. So, about the gun. Well, there are two guns, but from the stats in the garage, you won't notice that much of a difference. The gun we're going to talk about, of course, is this gun. It's the 85mm 5685JT. What is this? Well, basically, this is the middle gun from the T-34-85, so that's the first 85mm gun, buffed. So if you compare it to the T-34-85, essentially, it has worse penetration, worse alpha damage, but better reload and better DPM. That's essentially what you're getting. It also gets worse shell velocity, which is really frustrating and means this gun is kind of a bit of a potato. It sort of throws shots all over the place, and leading shots is kind of awkward. It's not a great gun, but it kind of gets the job done. That's about the best you can say about it. And that really kind of sums up the tank in general, to be honest. Let's talk about the grind. There isn't really much of a grind to talk about. Much like the Type T-34 before it, the Type-58 grind looks a little bit like the T-34-85 grind, but with half of it ripped out. So your stock configuration is going to basically be stock. Will you even have the next engine? No, you will not. You won't have the turret, you won't have the gun, you won't have anything. So you'll be basically completely stock, apart from possibly... Oh, okay, you'll have the top radio. Woohoo! So you are going to be painfully stock. What can you kind of do about this? Well, it's a plus side and a downside of the Type-58, I guess. The stock grind isn't that painful, and it's not that painful because the fully upgraded Type-58 is only a marginal improvement over the stock Type-58. So it means this is one of the better stock tanks to play, but not one of the better fully upgraded machines in the game, put it that way. I would recommend prioritizing the engine, because if you compare the two guns, the only real difference is the accuracy, the fully aimed dispersion at 100 meters, which is not particularly good on the original gun anyway. I mean, it's better than on the stock gun, so it's definitely worth buying, especially because you're going to be using this gun later on. But it's nothing to get too excited about. The same is true here. I mean, if you look at the engines, the stock engine is a 500 horsepower engine, the second engine is a 500 horsepower engine, the top engine is a 520 horsepower engine. Ooh, I know. But I do recommend you getting them because you're going to be using these engines on the subsequent medium tanks. And unless you want to have a kind of painful time in the subsequent medium tanks, then I do recommend... Whoops, I've gone down the wrong line. I do recommend getting your hands on those engines. And of course, from the Type-58, you can unlock both the IS-2 and the T-34-1. I recommend unlocking both of them. Unlocking the IS-2, or the stock gun on the IS-2 is the top gun from the T-34-1. So unlocking the IS-2 will automatically get you the top gun on the T-34-1. But yeah, choose whatever upgrade path you want. as I say, the upgrades are so incremental that it doesn't actually make all that much difference. Alright, crew skills, equipment, ammo, all that jazz. Crew skills, there's nothing particularly surprising here. This is my crew that has gone up the Chinese medium tank line and have subsequently been retrained for the Type-58, as I've been trying to ace it. Technically, this is my most played tank in the game. That's not because I love it, that's because I haven't got an ace in it yet. It's nothing particularly special here. Sixth sense on your commander, repairs on other people, maybe safe stowage on your loader. I mean, this is based on a T-34, so unlike some of the later Chinese tanks, modules don't break as soon as you look at it, which is nice. Eventually get brothers in arms if you want. You know, it's the standard crew skills for most medium tanks in the game. Prioritize repairs over camouflage, in my opinion. Consumables, I've got your standard consumables. You could swap some of these out for their premium versions, but I wouldn't bother with the automatic fire extinguisher. I mean, it's only a tier 6 machine, I really wouldn't bother personally. You could get improved combat rations, I guess, if you really like the tank, or if you really hate it and you're trying to squeeze a bit more out of it. But again, I don't think it's a fantastic option. I mean, it depends how much you like the tank, I guess. But I've just got your standard consumables. Ammo loadout, I've got 5 APCR and 5 HE. The HE rounds on this gun aren't bad if you actually have a look at the gun. 12 rounds a minute rate of fire, 128 pen, 172 with APCR, 43 with HE. Alpha damage 160, 160, 280. It's not, the alpha damage isn't as good with either round as on the T-34. 85, but 280 alpha and 43 pen is not bad for a tier 6 medium tank's HE rounds, so I've got a few of those. APCR I have a few of. Some people find the low penetration on this tank, or lowish, a bit frustrating. Frankly, I think you should be able to handle, I think tier 6 you should be able to handle about 130 pen on your medium tanks. I mean, if you play the VK 3002D with the 88mm gun, you get comparable penetration on a tier 7 medium tank, and I think that still kind of works. So yeah, I mean, I've got a few APCR rounds, but I don't really feel the need to fire them that often. I've got gun rammer, vents. You can't mount a vertical stabilizer on this thing because it's tier 6 and not American, or not a Sherman. Is there anything else you might want to go for? The bloom values on the gun are not great. The gun handling is not fantastic, so you might actually want an enhanced gun laying drive just to make the gun aim a bit faster. You could go for coated optics. I take binos, which you take is kind of up to you. I wouldn't bother with a camo net, wouldn't bother with a toolbox. So really the third equipment slot, your choice of either an enhanced gun laying drive, optics, or binos. I do think the other two slots should be a rammer and vents. I mean, on the subject of the reload, and I mentioned the gun, the reload time actually of 12 rounds a minute and 160 alpha damage is a fairly nice combination. It gives you quite a nice balance between alpha damage and DPM. It's not the highest DPM at tier 6 by any stretch of the imagination, but it has higher alpha than any of the tanks I can think of that get higher DPM than it, if that makes sense. And the DPM is respectable, and the alpha damage is also respectable, so it's not bad. Anyway, that was crew skills, consumables, equipment. Is there anything else I really want to say about this thing? One thing to bear in mind, you get 5 degrees of gun depression everywhere, which is not bad enough to be horrendous, but it kind of, it's not great. It's certainly nothing to get excited about. That's pretty much it. So let's go and have a quick look at the armor scheme and all that jazz. So there isn't really going to be that much to say about the module locations on the Type-58. They're pretty standard, but I'll go over them anyway. On the orange side here, you're going to have like a radio man sitting behind this machine gun port or something like that. You've got the driver sitting here behind the driver's hatch, surprising absolutely nobody ever. Looking at the side profile, you have obviously crew members in the side of the turret. You know, the turret is usually where the commander, gunner and loader live, clearly, because gunner and loader, there's a gun and commander, so we can look out the commander's hatch. There's also an ammo rack toward the rear of the turret, which is again pretty standard for most tanks, and this whole side profile toward the rear of the tank is actually fuel tank, so do be aware of that. Engine and fuel tanks at the rear, nothing really surprising there. Side profile from the other side is basically the same. Again, you've got your crew members in the turret, these orange areas. And again, you've got an ammo rack in the rear of the turret, fuel tanks. So yeah, nothing particularly surprising. And from the top, the thing to really note, and this is the thing you really need to note with most tanks, is the engine deck at the back. Now, this tank doesn't have a rear-mounted turret, so it doesn't have a frontal engine and all that jazz, so that won't make life more difficult for you, but, you know, artillery shots onto this section will give you headaches. Okay, armor profile. It's a T-34 hull, as I mentioned, so, you know, 45mm, even with a bit of angling, 50-something. Angle as much as you can, 60-something. Side armor, 70-something. Don't expect the hull to bounce anything apart from miracle bounces at funky angles, essentially. Strictly speaking, this bit right at the top of the engine deck is thinner, so if for some reason you're having problems penetrating the hull of this tank, aim up here. But I can't imagine any tank this thing meets is going to have that much difficulty penetrating it, except possibly the odd Tier 4 light tank, I guess. So the armour that this tank does have is essentially on the turret, and even then on the turret front side of the turret, 80, 70, again, it's only going to give problems to really low tier tanks. So, the front of the turret, well, there's a few things to note. Firstly, these commander's hatches, they're not weak spots. They're as thick as the front of the turret. They are 90mm thick, which is the same as the front of the turret, as I mentioned. So, I mean, I guess they're slightly bigger than the areas that are actually 90mm thick on the turrets. I mean, in that sense, they're weak spots, but the armour isn't actually any thinner. Looking at the turret front, the cheeks are around 90, going up to sort of 120 odd, depending on the curvature of the cheeks. Gun mantler is not fantastic. There's bits that are 150, bits that are 90, bits that are 120. It's a bit hit or miss. Essentially, don't rely on the armour of this tank for anything. You'll get the odd bounce here or there, and you know, consider yourself lucky when you do, maybe against lower tiers, or with extreme angling against higher tiers. More likely, your tracks will absorb some shots, so they'll save you that way. The odd shot get eaten by your gun mantler, but really don't expect anything particularly spectacular from this tank with regard to its armour. So, replay time as usual. This is a top tier game, sorry, struggling to get my words out here. So, tier 6 game, again, as per normal, the second game is going to be a tier 8 game, so we're going to be at the bottom of the feeding pool. And in a tier 6 game, the relative lack of penetration on your gun is not generally a massive problem. You still have the penetration to go through most targets you might face. The only ones you really have trouble with are basically some of the tier 6 heavy tanks. Thinking in particular of machines such as the OI here, but also machines such as the Churchill Mark 7. In fact, they have both on the enemy team. And when you're top tier, the pretty decent DPM, especially when you consider the 160 alpha damage, can be put to good effect when it comes to, you know, killing people fairly quickly and out-trading them. So when top tier, this tank is actually pretty decent. Now, we're on mines here. I've decided to go for the hill. Obviously, I'm exposed a little bit to enemy fire here, but we managed to get around this corner and take out the Crusader before he can give us any real problems. M4 Sherman there, the tier 4 Sherman, he is being a little bit brave. We managed to put a shot into him before he goes down. Now, this is where you start encountering one of the problems with the Type-58. The hill on mines is great, but once you've taken the hill, what do? Well, if you've got respectable gun depression, you come over here and shoot all these guys in the bum. If you don't, it's more awkward to find those shots. See, 129, 160 is my average, damn you game. And that shot just completely whiffs. So you can see, if I go right up there to the edge, I have to expose a huge amount of my tank before I can actually shoot any of these guys. So it's kind of awkward for me to get shots on them from this position. Nonetheless, I put a shot into the Churchill and a shot into the T-34. Trying to find a shot on the KV-2, gun depression fail, god damn it. And there you can see, 6 degrees, I'd be able to make that work. Managed to wedge the rear of my tank up, so that gives me a shot onto the KV-2, but someone has a shot onto me, and so I really don't want to hang around there longer than I have to. Put a second shot into the rear of the KV-2, again a low roll. And a third. And you can see we bounced a few shots there, probably from that T-34 if we're going to be honest. Can I put a shot into the Churchill? Yes I can, and we are rewarded with our second kill. So we're managing to make this work, but it's awkward with the dodgy gun depression on this tank. And now you can see, having shot those guys away at some distance, I just can't shoot that OI without exposing myself to him, and he has a dirty great big gun and I really don't want to get shot by it. So I'm just going to have a dance with our own OI experimental here. I mean, the scoreline is 10-4. This is turning into a pretty solid and convincing game. There was one artillery piece on the enemy team, but he has since died, so we don't have to worry too much about that. That just leaves the OI experimental, Chinukai, SU-100 and a Cromwell. Now this is where we have to be a little bit careful, and there's an OI experimental. Auto aim on him, I put a shot into his side, but it looks like the SU-100 has my number. Put another shot into the OI experimental side. I can't put shots into his rear because he actually has good bum armor. There's the SU-100, he's probably going to nail me here, and I really should have just pushed forward to try and get behind that building, but I don't, and he wrecks me, as he has that big old Russian 122mm gun. So there's one thing to be aware of. I basically died after taking 2 shots in this game because the SU-100 does 390 alpha damage at tier 6. Go figure. But apart from that, we were able to put a good amount of damage down, pick up 2 kills. You could see we had problems with the gun depression there. And we did even bounce a couple of shots from lower tier tanks who were presumably shooting up at us, and because that increased the angling on our upper front plate, I imagine that's where we got the bounces, possibly from the turret as well. Just watch this to its conclusion. It's only this Cromwell left, although this Cromwell is humiliating our T-34-85. It looks like this guy might have dodgy internet connection or something. But the ELC does the business and shotguns the Cromwell in the face, and that was the game. So let's go and have a look at the results. That ended up being enough for second class mastery. Also picked up a Fire for Effect ribbon. We finished second on our team by experience, only by 2 experience points behind that Panzer IV-H. Got 1,592 damage, which was the highest damage count of anyone in the game, and picked up those 2 kills. 13 shots fired, 12 hits, 11 pens for that damage count. We received 7 hits, of which 4 did penetrate and 3 did not. So, I lied, we actually took more penetrations there than I thought, but a couple of those were from a very small gun that made no difference in the end, because with 390 alpha damage, the SU-100 would reliably 2-shot us even from full health. Spotted 6 enemy tanks, damaged 6 enemy tanks, destroyed 2, got some assistance damage into the bargain, though not very much, and made a 14,500 credit profit, because tier 6 is a fairly profitable tier to be in that quick and dirty game. So that showed you the Type-58 gun depression problems, how the gun sort of performs. Now we're going to switch it up, and we're going to go to a game where we are at the bottom of the feeding pool, of course. Here then is the promised bottom tier game. Now, with its lowish penetration, kind of dubious accuracy, and really low shell velocity, this is the sort of game where you might expect the Type-58 to really struggle. And to be fair, you'd have a point. Of the tier 6 medium tanks, the Type-58 is one of those really prefers to be at the top of the feeding pool. You know, if you're driving around in something like a Cromwell, yeah, sure, being top tier is great, but even if you're bottom tier, you have almost 150 pen with that gun, you have really good DPM, decent fully aimed accuracy, and it goes like stink. So you're fast. And so you actually have a lot of tools at your disposal to still perform fairly well, even when you're bottom tier. Now the Type-58 doesn't go like stink. It has mediocre gun depression, the penetration is not very good, the DPM, while not bad, is not as good as the Cromwell, you know. It's just relatively painful. Now I probably should have taken that shot earlier, because I always do this on this map, I never judge correctly where that sort of building starts. Just to of course quickly mention, this is on Muravanka, and the last game was Mines. This is not going to be quite such an aggressive game. Now, why am I sitting in a bush like a wuss? Quite simply, looking at the enemy team, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tier 8s. And of those tier 8s, 1 is an IS-3 and 2 are a platoon of FCM 50 tons. Now, my expectation was that the IS-3 and the FCMs were going to plough through the forest, and in a fight with either of those tanks, I'd just get murdered. That was a terrible shot, and there you can see the bad shell velocity. So I really didn't want to go over to the right-hand side of the map, sort of the 9 and 0 lines. I thought that would be bad. It's very difficult to do any proper spotting on this map, especially in this tank, because it's not really fast enough to contest those sort of spotting locations. And so at the moment, I'm just hanging back and trying to make sure that I don't get spotted and that I survive. If I survive toward the latter part of the game, where the battlefield has kind of thinned out a bit as people have died, then it's easier to flank people and put shots into their rear, because while you can try and snipe with this gun, it's not very accurate, the penetration isn't very good, the shell velocity is bad. Basically, this is not a particularly good gun to use at range. So you really want to be flanking people where at all possible. And I decide to try here and see if I can put shots into the rear of some of these tanks, because two of their tier 8s, the T-69 and the IS-3, have actually come over here. And since they changed this map, I can actually have some cover here from the enemy who might be sitting on a hill trying to shoot me. So I put one shot into the rear of that T-69 and set him on fire. American tanks do tend to have quite flammable booties. Put a second shot into him, but the T-69 doesn't really seem to want any more, can't blame him. Now, 128 PEM, what does that mean in practice? Against an IS-3, it means you need to aim for the bump. Oh, and I set the IS-3 on fire. So this game would actually, for those who are interested, have completed the incinerator mission for the Object 260, as I just set two tier 8 tanks on fire. So 128 PEM, against an IS-3, you can't reliably go through its side armor. You certainly can't go through its front, and so you have to settle for his bum, and indeed I was able to put shots into his backside there. And again, like the previous game, this game is going to be relatively short. You can see I went round to flank those guys, the T-69 and the IS-3. Our team came in as well, and we just cleaned up. On the other side of the map, the FCM platoon has died, which surprised me. FCM platoons are often very strong. Can I do something about the Burt? There we go, there's one shot. And someone else picks up the kill. So, yeah, I was a little bit surprised that the FCM platoon didn't do better, but, what are you going to do? IS is coming for me, and 128 PEM versus an IS can give you problems, but not as much as a Borsig in the background. So what happened there? The IS put a shot into me, I bounced on the IS, I tried to take a shot at the Borsig, and then I took a shot from the Borsig and died. It is fairly common in tier 8 games that you will die in 2 shots. Sometimes in 1 shot, the Borsig can mount a big 15cm gun, like the ISU-152, and then you're a 1 shot. What's less common is to find that sort of alpha damage at tier 6, but you can see what happens there. In both of those games, the armor wasn't fantastic. We died in 2 meaningful shots. I mean, the previous game we bounced a couple more, but it was 2 shots worth would have still done the job. The bounces were kind of meaningless. But you could see there that we were able to do some damage by getting around people's rears, essentially. And that's what you have to do in the Type-58. And in that sense, it's a very typical, I guess, medium tank. You need to flank people, you need to shoot people in the bum for it to be successful, because you do not have the penetration to go through people's fronts, and in some cases, like that IS-3, you don't really have the penetration to go through people's sides either. Anyway, let's go and have a look at the results from this one. Well, despite adding another death to the tally, that actually wasn't a bad game. We got 2nd class mastery, fire for effect, and bruiser, and even picked up some assistance damage into the bargain. Finished 3rd on our team by experience earned, behind our friendly AMX CDC and E25. Who did we beat? In fact, we beat, you know, lots of tier 8s and whatnot, did more damage than most of our team. We did, in terms of damage, we certainly did more than we had health. That's the fire for effect ribbon, which is usually a good metric. We pulled more weight in that game than one might expect a tier 6 medium to pull, which is always nice. Even though the type has dodgy penetration, you can still pull your weight when bottom tier, depending on the map and how the match goes and whatnot. And again, not again, but notice that I didn't fire a single round of APCR in either of those games, and even if I had, it wouldn't have made that much difference. The APCR pain goes up to 170 something. That might have meant I'd have penetrated the side of the IS-3 in that 2nd game, I guess. So that might have pushed my damage up to over 1500, say. But in the grand scheme of things, it wouldn't have made that much difference. 11 shots fired, 9 hits, 6 penetrations, for that 1384 damage count. We received 2 hits, we bounced nothing, we died. 1 enemy tank spotted, 4 damaged or destroyed, and 235 assistance damage into the bargain. There was an event on at the time for winning stuff. You got 10 gold. This was on the EU server, so that's where the 10 gold there in that post-game stats window is, where that's from. And even once you'd taken away repair costs and all that, we still made a 14,000 credit profit. Not quite as much as the previous game, we didn't do quite as much damage, but still fairly respectable. And nice bit of experience as well. And that was with a standard account. I should of course mention, if you're running a premium account, that'd have been a 24,000 credit profit, because tier 6 is a pretty profitable tier. So, had a look at some gameplay. Let's go and round things off in the garage. So what do I think about the Type-58? Well, so I had this tank originally, sold it because I got the next tank, rebought it because there was an IS-6 marathon mission on and you needed a tier 6 from every tech tree to do it. Sold it again and then subsequently rebought it to try and get the ace in it. So that's why I've played so many games in this thing. When I first played it, I kind of liked it. Since I have played other tier 6 medium tanks that are better. So a lot of people compare this to the T-34-85, which is entirely understandable. It is essentially a T-34-85, but the way it's implemented in the game, it is different in some areas in ways that mean it's hard to tell if it's actually better or worse than that machine. So if you compare the two, the T-34-85 gets better penetration and alpha damage on its gun. The Type-58 gets slightly better dispersion values and better DPM. The T-34-85 gets better horsepower to ton ratio with a more powerful engine. The Type-58 gets better ground resistance values. That kind of evens that out a little bit. So in practice, I find this thing not obviously better or worse than the T-34-85. Now, I think people will still prefer the T-34-85 because its advantages are more obvious, you know, better horsepower per ton ratio, better penetration, better alpha damage. But if you actually look at it and you actually play them, I find that the two are kind of comparable. However, there is a machine in the game that renders this tank completely obsolete. It wasn't in the game when I first played it, but it has obviously since been introduced, and that is the other Soviet tier 6 medium tank, the A-43. If you compare those two machines, they get comparable armor. The A-43, assuming you're using the 75mm gun on that tank, which is the gun I would recommend, it gets worse fully aimed accuracy, but far better gun handling. It gets worse alpha damage, but much better DPM, or better DPM. I find it a far more comfortable gun to use. And the A-43 also is faster. It gets a better horsepower per ton ratio and far better ground resistance values. So in my opinion, it's not the T-34-85 that tells you everything you need to know about this tank, it's the A-43. The A-43 is not an overpowered machine. The A-43, I think, is a pretty well balanced tier 6 medium tank, but it renders the Type-58 basically completely obsolete. It is just better, in my humble opinion. So this tank is not, the Type-58 is not horrible, but it's very mediocre. You know, it's really not great. I actually prefer it to the T-34-85. The gun on the T-34 drives me spare. But the only reason I still have this machine is that I'm chasing an ace tanker in it. When I eventually get that ace tanker, and it still eludes me, when I eventually get it, I will sell this tank. And the crew will jump down into the Type T-34, and I'll try and get my ace tanker in that. So yeah, overall, Type-58, not a great tank, not completely terrible, very difficult to say much about it because it's so very mediocre. It doesn't really do anything particularly well. You know, I don't think many people are really going to be keeping it. In fact, I know some people really don't like it. So yeah, I personally, well, as I say, once I get the ace tanker, I will sell it and move on. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that review, possibly even found it informative. If you did, by all means feel free to catch some of my other videos and or subscribe to my channel. And I wish you very happy hunting on that battlefield. Ciao, ciao.